That's the Delines from their new album Mr. Luck and Ms. Doom. And here is songwriter, guitarist, and novelist Willy Vlautin, direct from Oregon, to tell us how this new album came together. But first, Willy remembers the first time the Delines toured New Zealand back in 2014.
Holy shit, that was, I remember that, because we were pretty green as a band. You know, we hadn't done a whole lot. And I remember out on the weekend, and we had just the best time of maybe all time. Maybe it was the pinnacle of Delines debauchery was that tour.
I'm afraid to ask what that means.
Oh man, it means a lot of gin and tonics and me being a DJ. We had probably one of the best times I've ever had on tour, because for a good week we were based out of Melbourne in a really cool part of town, and you had the mornings off.
Right.
So instead of sitting in a van all day, you're walking around soaking up the city. And I found some really cool bookstores.
Right.
And it was just heaven, man. It was just heaven.
Right. And I'm guessing you have a significant book collection and record collection.
Yeah. I have a huge book collection. The only way I can get a handle on my book collection is that I wait until I'm in a bad mood, and I don't get mad very often. I have a real easy life that way.
Right.
But when I'm in a bad mood, man, I run up to my book collection and I start picking it. I'll never read you again. I'll never read you again. And that's the only way I can get rid of books. So you have to wait till I'm in a bad mood. And the first second I'm in a bad mood, I run up and start throwing out books that I know I won't read.
Right.
And you're right. I had a huge record collection and huge CD collection, and then I got robbed.
Oh man,
maybe over 20 years ago, and they took everything.
Oh man.
So I've just buy vinyl now, from say 2000 on, I've just bought vinyl.
Yeah.
And so I got some vinyl, yeah.
But it's getting expensive, isn't it? The new ones.
Yeah, it always has been. Yeah, it is. It has been. And it's like graphic novels and LPs. I can blow a lot of money on both of them, and both are really expensive. So I quit graphic novels altogether for a while to save money. And but it's hard to stop buying records.
Yes, it is indeed. You can see from behind me. But all right, let's talk about your new record, Mr. Luck and Ms. Doom. So my understanding is, I've read the press stuff and all the accompanying things, and this all came about from a conversation you and Amy had about writing a song that wasn't going to depress her too much. Where did it go from there?
Well, yeah, Amy's about as cool as a person could be. And right. She puts up a lot with my songs, because I'm more dark-minded than she is. And we were playing a gig, I think it was in Dublin, Ireland. And, she kind of, after the gig, she kind of grabbed me. I always think of it like if your aunt catches you raiding her liquor cabinet, that's different than your mom. Your mom's horrified, and it's like, my son's an alcoholic. But right. Your aunt's just like, buddy, knock it off. And she grabs you like that and says, listen, bud, I'm a normal girl. Can't I just have a love song where no one dies and they get away and live happily ever after? And I said, of course you should. And then I went home, and man, I tried, and I wrote her a handful of happily ever after songs, but Mr. Luck and Miss Doom was the best one. And then, of course, it all fell apart, and I started writing tunes like Her Pony Boy and JP and Me and Nancy and the Pensacola Pimp, where everything falls apart.
Right.
So I got her one, but then she took me aside and she said, hey, man, can't a middle-aged woman can't she ever just get the money and run and get away with it? And so I wrote her one of those where Maureen's gone missing, where the woman gets everything. But then it started falling apart too, with Lorraine, a couple other women that didn't quite do so well, that didn't even make the record. But then I gave her Nancy and the Pensacola Pimp, which is a hard song, but Nancy gets out in the end. And, by the time Nancy's 20, she's, a millionaire.
Yeah. Well, just hearing you talk about these songs like this, populated with all these characters, and of course, you being a novelist, that makes kind of sense. But is that how your mind works? Are you thinking about, are all these people based on people you've met, or is it your mind just working overtime, making these up?
Kind of half and half, it all depends which songs, but I've always been a story oriented song writer.
Right.
And as a fan, I mean, I got into music as a kid for escapism, the idea of like trying to find some place where you were a million miles away from your home and who you were. That's why, and so I gravitated towards folk music. Paul Kelly was a real big hero of mine growing up. So that kind of songwriting where it takes you to a location, a place, was always important to me. And so I've always just written characters. And I like when Amy sings about, like Nancy the Pensacola Pimp, the way her voice creates the characters. She kind of inhabits it and elevates the songs.
Drank nothing but Orange Crush and ate powdered donuts. He'd stay up for weeks on end, making money hand over fist. He was scared of nothing, but he'd lose track of what he said and what he did. Nancy and the Pensacola Pimp.
And the word Nancy and the Pensacola Pimp, that title just came to me.
Right.
And then I write a story around that, like a little movie. I'll think about it like a little movie, and then I'll write a soundtrack to it, and then tinker on the lyrics forever and ever and ever, and then I show the band, and they either like it or they say nothing, and we never bring it up again. It just depends.
Let's just move on.
Yeah.
I love it. So you and Amy, do you have any kind of deep and meaningful discussions about these songs and these characters and this music? Or you've been making these records together for a good long time now. Is it kind of unspoken?
Kind of half and half. I mean, I try to be really careful about the songs I give her. I mean, the last thing I want to do is make her have to sing something she doesn't want to sing. There's certain subjects she doesn't like singing about, and I stay away from those. And I have a way of, like, if she doesn't like it, if I can just, even if she doesn't want to hurt my feelings, if I can tell she doesn't like it, I won't do it, and I'll just write another one. So sometimes it's about, we'll just have broad discussions about things that are going on in her life or my life or in our town. Our town, Portland, Oregon's, has a part in this, like the Haunting Thoughts. It has a soul in the record, and so we'll talk about stuff like that, and then I'll go home and write tunes about it. So it's a little bit of both, but most of it is just hanging out there so much. I just kind of pick up things that she might be interested in, and then I go home and write it and hope she likes it all right,
Okay. So elaborate a little bit more on how Portland is kind of around especially the haunting thoughts, because to me, just listening to it, it sounds like it's all written about anxiety and things that, people going through that thing, and you've made a video for it. But what's Portland got to do with it?
Every morning when I wake up feeling bleak, and I'm nervous that the feeling might never leave, like I'm circling a drain. I know I ain't. Every time I see something on the street, like some drugged out woman who ain't even 20, or some guy passed out OD, I know it ain't me, and I'll just keep walking.
The record's really drug-addled, I think.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of needles.
And yeah, and I mean, and maybe 4 or 5 songs that were important to the band that didn't even make the record.
Ooh, okay.
We're in that world too. So sometimes I make a mistake of which songs made the record and which didn't, as far as the heart of the record. But, Portland has really struggled with the opioid epidemic.
Right.
It was really hit hard. And so all of a sudden, you took this really beautiful city And it felt, if you know, it wasn't overnight, but it felt like overnight that you woke up and all of a sudden there's people under 40 living in tents on the side of the road, people walking around downtown, and men and women, young people just out of their minds, and you know, having hibachi fires by the side of a freeway,
right?
You know, ODing in front of a store. And the day I wrote Haunting Thoughts, I was in Portland, and you know, I have a little office at the edge of Portland, and I was getting out of my car, and there was a guy next to me that was knotted out in a stolen car, or it seemed like a stolen car because they had the ignition busted out and all that. And then I saw a woman that, man, under 25, you know, passed out in a doorway. And it's such a big epidemic. It just kind of, without me even really thinking about it, it seeped into the songs. And I think a romantic version of that might be Her Pony Boy, right, where it's, you know, it's a very romantic tune in a lot of ways, but you know, they get caught because of fentanyl.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so that kind of stuff just seeps in, or Nancy and the Pensacola Pimp. And then the opposite would be Lorraine, which is, you know, American drug laws were so intense that, you know, this woman, Lorraine, gets busted for selling weed and then goes to prison. And then by the time she gets out, weed's legalized, and there's more weed stores than bars now in Portland. Right. But she's still labeled a felon. And so she can only get a job like as a maid. She's kind of set up to fail.
The rain is starting to sing, 'cause the only job she can get is a maid. In the back of her head is a beat that a felon ain't supposed to make it.
That kind of stuff just kind of seeps into it, because I was, you know, I was also I was writing this stuff without really thinking about how much heroin references are in the songs. And I've never done heroin. I'm not never been a junkie or even dabbled in it. But it just soaks into you, because if you walk around Portland, man, it soaks into you. In the RV cities, you know, there's like little cities of broken down RVs, and yeah, it's one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been in. And it feels like it just got hijacked a little bit. I'm sure it'll be all right, but it's going through a rough stage.
Sounds somewhat bleak, but there you go.
Parts of it are, but it is one of the great American cities, I think, too.
Okay. So you mentioned, I think, Maureen's Gone Missing. There's a pretty cool video with that, and all sorts of little things. I mean, there's lyrics, there's things in the video with like the Rockford Files in the background and stuff like that. Maybe is there anything? And guy, you know, there's the redheaded albino, and I mean, there's just so much to take in.
Maureen's gone missing. Yeah, it's true. Maureen's gone missing. Next it was a redhead albino banging at her door. The manager got the keys, but her things weren't there no more.
Maureen's Gone Missing has always been kind of one of my favorites on the record, because it's all told from a woman sitting by a swimming pool.
Right.
So like the narrator of it is telling this whole tale while she's sitting by the pool, which I just love that image. But yeah, it's basically Maureen is stolen some bad guy's money, most likely. It's one of my songs for Amy's middle-aged woman getaway.
Right.
That breaks free of her life. And all these kind of, you know, bad dudes, the guy with missing fingers, the albino, you know, the guys with tattoos on their necks and guns are all looking for Maureen. And this woman knows exactly where Maureen is, because she gave Maureen her car. Yeah. She's just sitting by a pool watching it all. And the video was just me and Amy having fun. I made up all these, you know, like certificates that she won, like a nunchuck expert, knife throwing expert, yep, underwater combat instructor, all this kind of stuff. And so we were just having fun, and we're all fans of the Rockford Files. That was always my favorite show, and I think about that show a lot because that's he's the man with the worst friends of all time, but he lives on the beach and he's got a cool dad, and so it was just kind of a nod to that. And then we put Wanda, the poster Wanda, the Barbara Loden movie about a powerless woman, and there's a 8x10 of Pam Grier, who's like a really strong woman, and then there's a 8x10 of Gail Russell, who's kind of a drug alcohol addled actress that I always think about when I'm trying to make sure I keep my life in line. I think about Gail Russell.
Yeah.
So a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. So I see there Netflix is making a film out of The Night Always Comes. Have you ever had the thought about your songs being made into films as well? They're very cinematic. So has anyone approached you about that?
No, not really. I mean, a couple of our songs, Richmond Fontaine songs in particular, have kind of weaseled their way into movies over the course of years. But no one's ever approached me about making a song into a movie, but that'd be really cool. They are like, my songs are like little short stories, little movies. Yeah.
So. And what can you tell us about the next Netflix film? Do you get much involved in that, or they buy the rights and you let them at it? Do you have any input?
Yeah. And all my, I've had the Netflix one was the third one, and the probably the most where I sold them the rights, and then they like pushed me out of the room a little bit, which is fair because I sold the rights to it. So I had no involvement at all in this one. I wish I could have had more involvement, but that's not what they wanted.
Right.
But it's a great deal for me. It helps me keep the Delines going, and it helps me keep writing. So it was great, and they were not, they're nice to me, and everybody was really cool to me, but I didn't have any involvement.
Have you seen is it made yet? I don't think it's out.
Yeah, it was made, and I'm supposed to see it. I mean, they just finished an edit, so I'm supposed to see it pretty soon. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea.
Right.
I visited the set one time.
Right.
It's only.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So you've got Mr. Luck and Ms. Doom out. What's on your plate next? Are you writing books? Are you writing songs? Are you always doing both? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of, the way I've kind of survived doing all this is I just never stop. It's like like if you stop and realize, especially in a band, I'd always told like Richmond Fontaine, I'd be like, well, we'll break up after the next record. But I'd always have another batch of tunes going. Right. And so I kind of tricked the guys into staying together for 20 years that way. And I've kind of do the same with the Delines. I'm always like, well, let's just do one more. Let's just do one more. So I always got songs going or trying, and I'm always tinkering on a novel when I can. And I got one almost done right now that I think's okay. And then we're touring a lot this year. I think we're doing three or four tours. I know 2 for sure, but maybe 2 more on the horizon as well. So we'll be touring the new record quite a bit, which is really lucky. I mean, the Delines is, they're such great pals of mine, and it's such a cool band and a lucky band at my age to be in, that I'll hang out with them any day of the week.
Sounds good. Well, hopefully we can hang out down under somewhere sometime soon. We'd love to have you back again. I
hope so. Yeah. We played Auckland one time. So I was there for, I don't know, like 16 hours. It was one of those that you're like, really? We only have 16 hours? And we were staying in a hotel with a pool. So it was a nice, it was a seriously nice place, but it was out in like the suburbs somewhere. And you're like, shit, man, I can't even walk anywhere and see. I can't even get a little taste of it, and then the next thing you know, we're flying back. Yep. So that's just the way it is. You get to see everything for an hour, but that's why that Love Police tour, the last one, was so brilliant. Is I'm walking around Melbourne every day for a week.
Yeah.
Just heaven. Just
a lot
heaven.
of folks end their tours in New Zealand, and then they can spend like a week, at the end of things, and because we're at the end of the world anyway. So Makes sense.
Well, yeah, man. I mean, I remember Richmond Fontaine. My wife and I took a big vacation, and I've always been a huge fan of Australian, besides music, but movies, So, so we had a really brilliant time kind of driving around and checking things out.
If you enjoyed this episode of the 13th Floor's Music Talk series, please be sure to subscribe to the website or to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram and wherever you find your podcasts. There's a whole lot more to discover.